Welcome back to the deeper dive version of 26 Minutes with, again, David Cohen here, and with our guest, Alejandro Cuellar and Greg Clarke from the Certified Listeners Society, or certifiedlisteners.org. We talked about your career backgrounds and your past. Did you have an inclination, like, at some point in your life, this is the work you're going to do? I know, like, for me growing up, I had a passion as a kid for broadcasting and radio, and I've always stayed with it. It hasn't been my major focus career-wise, but did you have like an inkling that this one day this is the kind of work you want to be doing?
Is that for both of us? Or well, I can start right away and then Greg can go. Um, I never thought, to be honest with you. I always had a passion for family. I always had a passion for helping. I always did. I always, ever since I had my first daughter, I became a feminist, and then the second one it was double down, and I always was very interested in self-awareness, and spirituality, and all of those good things. But I never thought that I was gonna end up where I am today. To be honest with you, I am very happy. I am very glad. I think that we are just. This is just the beginning for certified listeners. I think that there is a lot more to come, but I never thought that I was going to end up where I am, and I'm happy.
And Greg, what about you? Like, you have a background in sort of mental health and counseling.
Um, yeah, but mine was a little bit of a surprise to me. I grew up in a family business, and I thought I was gonna go to Laurier to take business. I played football in those days, got a little scholarship, and then I met my wife, who was my girlfriend, and she was in the social services. And I was like, oh, there's this other stuff you can do. And my mom had actually been a caseworker for Veteran Affairs when I was young. And so I think some of it goes with that helping spirit that I learned from her. So it was kind of a new world to me. And then I ended up switching my major in college. And then I liked it. It was nice to help people.
Yeah.
So then the path just continued.
Excellent. Yeah, it's nicer helping people than tackling them on the 45-yard line, right?
Yeah.
Although that's fun too. Again, like, how did this idea happen? Like, whose idea? When did you first get together and say, wouldn't this be a good idea? Like how did that take place?
I have to say, I was already fiddling around with. So my first thought when I decided to do something about it, my first thought is, how can it be that we have a car that drives itself to from Toronto to Montreal, a Tesla? And
Mhm.
how can it be that we don't have any technology that is actually there to help people in a personal space? That's how everything began for me to go into doing something online. Let me put it that way. And then eventually, we had several iterations of certified listeners with different formats until the one that we have today, that is actually the one that is working. In business, you have to trial and error many things until they actually work. And so that's what happened with certified listeners. And then it was Greg, the one that ran into something about us. And he sent me a very nice email. And I don't remember the exact words. I still have the email, but I don't exactly remember the exact words, where it said something like, great things that you guys are doing. However, you need to be careful, because if you don't do it right, you're going to get somebody angry. And I couldn't understand. So eventually we began replying, and he said, listen, it's not that you're doing it wrong. You're just doing it. The problem is that you need to do it right, because you cannot provide therapy, you cannot provide this. And that's when we decided to meet, here in our offices, precisely in this same office in Burlington. We met on a Sunday. I remember that very well. And then we decided I said, you know what, if you are interested, we will love to have you, but we are volunteers. He said, well, you know what, I do. I'll let Greg continue from there, because that's how things began happening, and it has been great.
Yeah, actually, I think it was a job ad or something because I've always done extra work because I didn't get in the field because I make millions. Um, and there was something about regulation because sitting
Yes.
on council for the College of Social Work for 9 years, I became a little bit of an expert on professional regulation, especially in social work and counseling. And so there was a question that people might misinterpret something. So I was like, oh, by the way, you might want to check out this legislation. And then we had a conversation, um, and it led to, I think at one point he just looked at me and said, so what would you want to do? And I had the privilege of starting a community crisis team from scratch. And I was a frontline worker for many years. And then this opportunity came up in the Peterborough region for the 4 county crisis program. And somehow they ended up hiring me to start it. Um, so it started with me in a desk, and then it became a 24/7 program with a crisis house and 32 staff. And but it continued to nag at me that what about people who aren't in crisis that actually need a connection with humanity? And I'd had long relationships with the distress centers, again, a higher level. And I kind of equated it to the medical field, which I've been in my mental health capacity for a long time. And, you have doctors, which are like the professional mental health crisis teams, and nursing staff and nurse practitioners that might be distress centers. And then I thought, well, maybe certified listeners, the PSW. We do the hands-on stuff, the stuff that needs to be done, the humanity, the connection with people, if I was to equate it. And that isn't a shot or disrespecting any of those professions. It's just the level of care was kind of how I thought about it, and that it was a gap, and that um, it shouldn't be that difficult to do if you just look at what is required. So I adjusted a lot of the training aspects to what we would do. And in fact, we often laugh that one of the training programs is for our volunteers how not to give advice, because we drill that into them all the time. Helping somebody come to their own decision or conclusion, fine, supporting them. But our volunteers will not tell someone what to do, or they won't be a volunteer very long. Um, and that's also why we have supervisors in real time for the quality control. So
You're laughing about that, but that's really tough to do. Having done coaching and with entrepreneurs, they're always looking for advice and what to do. So you're really stretching and developing a new muscle by just listening and not and putting the brakes on, offering advice. That's really like, and I think we all want to help that way. We all want to say, well, if I were you, I would do this, right? So good, good on you and for recognizing that, and also on the volunteers for putting on those brakes. In terms of this notion of your organization and listeners, what is the distinction, say, then between the Certified Listeners Society and the Distress Center or other organizations that offer help and counseling?
I think that I'm going to let Greg answer that. I guess my only 2 cents is that we are not a distress center. In other words, if somebody's in distress, we do have a list of organizations. When somebody comes in distress, they want to hurt themselves, they want to harm physically themselves, or they have suicidal thoughts. Our volunteers are trained to say, this is not what we do. This is not what we do. If you need that kind of help, you can go here, you can go here, you can go here, or you can call this number, you can go there. We are not here. That's not what we do. But I'm gonna, Greg is better equipped to answer that than myself.
well, I think the key is in the question. We don't do counseling, and we shouldn't do counseling. We're there to have a conversation between two people, to listen and help somebody come to their own conclusions about things. So, and the level of training at the distress center is situated to give people a different skill set. In fact, I was fortunate that one of the people who helped set up distress center training was very generous and provided me an overview of what they were doing so I could adjust it accordingly. So things around self-harm, it's with our training, we recognize the language and when somebody may be at risk and how to ask the question, and then to let them know that's not something we can provide credible help with, but we can talk to you about, okay, now who do you reach out for that? Where distress centers, they are training their staff or their volunteers for that, and they have paid staff that are there 24/7 as well to make sure that if anything does need to kick to a different level, that they have those specific skill sets for that. So so it's a bit of a challenge, and it is a tightrope because sometimes, you know, human nature comes in. But it's really knowing what our lane is. And that's why, again, in my head, because how I see it, you know, PSWs don't do stitches. You know, they're not doing active treatment, they're doing care.
Yes. And I like the fact that you have a niche, and it's a very clear niche. And I think that also bodes well for your future success, you know, in terms of, because it's clear, it's like a, you know, a light beacon on the ocean, you know, or a lighthouse on the ocean. You know what
I like a lot how, I'm sorry, I like a lot how Greg said it, you know, it's early stage intervention. It's early stage, very, very early. Yeah, that's what we want to do.
And so needed. Now, in terms of like who's coming to you, like demographics, do you get, you know, and Greg, when you and I spoke last week before our interview today, you mentioned, you know, you get a lot of calls from outside of Canada, but who, you know, where are calls coming from? And then are women, men, or youth using your services more?
I mean, I would say that we get a little bit of everything. You know, it's for everything. I'm going to say that is, if I want to not generalize, but try to put it on a small package, I will say that is generally females, and I'm going to say younger females. I'm going to put it that way, and I'm going to say 35 and under. Now, this is a guess on the age only because of the situations that they're talking about.
Right.
We don't have a way to know their age. Let me put it that way. And so females, you know, my dad used to say that we males never ask for help because we know everything. So in general, that's changing. That's changing a little bit. There is a lot of males that are coming to us as well. Many males. And it's a little bit of, because we are on the internet, people share ads, and we eventually get them from anywhere. Right now, we are hoping to start expanding into the US, and we're hoping to get more, I'm going to say local colors, let me put it that way. And but it's a little bit of everything. I don't know if Greg has anything else to add on that.
No, because I don't have hard numbers. Like you said, we don't collect stats on people. We don't make them fill out intake forms or anything. So that's not, there's enough of that in the world. We don't need to do it too. So we're just interested in the person.
Have you thought of taking this kind of work and the training into companies, and, you know, and leaders and managers of companies, you know, to empower their teams, and, you know, and
that is one of the business development strategies that we have in place right now. It's called employment. We have an employment resilience training program. Okay, so what it is we are helping employees become volunteers to their own community. Let me put it that way.
Yes.
So we train employees to be listeners to their own family and peers. Let me put it that way. Instead of coming to help us be listeners on the chat room, now they can do it on their own community.
Yeah.
So that's something that we're beginning to do as well. Yes.
Yeah. And I think it's really important, especially with, leadership shifting and changing, and the needs for good leadership, not management, leadership, that's needed out in our communities, whether it's in corporate or it's in the nonprofit or it's in the medical field. We need good leaders, and we need listening. Everybody's too quick to say, I know it all. Here's what I think. Tough luck, right? And look what's happened. Cancel culture, right? We don't like what somebody's saying. What if you just listen to that other person and just acknowledge? You don't have to agree. Or this idea of quiet quitting in an organization where people they don't feel heard, they don't feel appreciated in their jobs. So yeah, really super powerful work. Good. I'm glad that's on part of the game plan. In terms of the funding for your organization, what's the funding model for it? How do you yeah.
So the funding model up to now has been through government subsidies and grants. That's now we are I'm going to say we're a very small organization. We don't require so far a lot of funding, but it has been through government grants and subsidies. However, that is beginning to change. We are on the business development side. One of the things that we are now expanding to do is to put more licenses of certified listeners across the United States and Canada. So now we have other sources of income that can support us our growth. Again, it's just beginning, and the goal is to be a little bit more self-sufficient. Government grants, even though they're welcome and they're really, really good, they are uncertain until you have the money on the bank. And they can be on time, they can be late, they can be canceled, they can be many things. And unless you have a very secure, very large government funding, and there are many organizations that live out of government grants or funding that happens every year. Let me put it that way. We are not in that case. We have to go on one at a time basis. So it has been grants, but we're expecting to be self-sufficient, hopefully within the next year.
I really hope you do. And if you do want a good funding model to follow, get cell phones done it without government grants, especially at the beginning. Now it might have changed. 2 questions left. So gentlemen, if you were to gaze into a crystal ball, what do you see for your organization? What would you like to see happen in the next year or few years?
I'll let Greg answer first if he has anything to add. Then I can say my own.
I guess certainly finances influence things. My fantasy world would have us being able to function in multiple languages. Unfortunately, that does require a lot of money to set up, and partnerships, and I'm not interested in doing things with shortcuts. So either we do it well or we don't do it. And also being exclusionary because of finances and having to pick, this group deserves our services and this doesn't. That's not a position I want to be in. So I think mine's really general. It's more accessible. We can be, the better. And if we were able to have relationships that were a little more formal when we did make I'll call it a soft referral. It's not an official referral, but we also like to do a bit of vetting about If we say this would be an organization for you to connect with, that can provide you the help that we can't, having the ability to have some of those relationships and the person power to be able to do that kind of thing. So expanding with logic and reason, I guess, would be what I would like to do. And we've dabbled with this a little bit when possible, and we do it mostly internally, having speakers and educators come in to enhance the knowledge of our volunteers. Sometimes it's something that they can use directly, but sometimes we do it out of appreciation for them and who they are, and their curiosity about people and how to help them. So we'll bring in speakers that invite our volunteers, and being able to sponsor things for the general community about things that people can do to help. Obviously, we're not going to be in the category of Gabor Mate, for instance, but we have had some speakers in, one who was talking about trauma modality, I'll call it, on tribal theory. And that was to bring that knowledge to people and a different perspective that is being used in that area. We don't do therapy, but again, being able to bring some of that information to people from a credible source might be an offshoot down the road. So, surprise, Alejandro.
There's a gentleman in Ottawa that does trauma for men and men only, and I had him as a guest for a series of learning program I did last summer. And so if you ever need his contact, I thought again his niche was really interesting. Us men don't like to talk about our stuff and our issues, but I think it's really important that we do. How has this work changed you, Alejandro? I'll ask you first. How has doing this work changed you?
My God, that's a very I'm going to say that is a very personal question. Nothing wrong with it, but it has changed me in different levels. At a personal level, it makes you more humble. It makes you more and more humble. To recognize so many people can be helped with an idea. Let me put it that way. It's just an idea that eventually grows thanks to so many other people that believe in the same, and then eventually they help others. That is a very humbling experience at a personal level. At a professional level, it has changed me a lot, and I'm going to say that without knowing, Greg has been a very good help, a good mentor to me in many ways. I am very enthusiastic, and as an entrepreneur, I push and push and push forward with ideas, and many times with a lot of care. I'm going to put it that way. Greg has put the brakes on many things that I would have done. When he says, I don't do shortcuts, and I would have taken some shortcuts because in the business world, you try to get there faster. You know what I'm saying? And then eventually you're just shooting yourself on the foot just because you're getting it faster, and then eventually you find out that oops, if I had done it right at the beginning, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Yeah.
And at a professional level, Greg has helped me see things in a completely different way many times, and it has helped me be more level-headed. I'm going to put it that way, level-headed. So that's in short how also, and I'm sorry, also initially I mentioned that I wanted to do this for many different reasons, and at the end of the day, I find out that I do it because I want to do it. If you know what I'm saying. So it's not about my initial idea that I wanted to do A, B, C, D, and I want to do it for this and for that. at the end of the day, I'm doing it because I like it, and I am really, really happy that we are where we are. So that's what I can add to that question.
I really enjoyed our chat today, gentlemen, Greg and Alejandro. And I really appreciate, and it took us a few months to get to here today, but I'm really appreciative, and I'm really happy that you both agreed to be guests on this podcast. Again, you know, if people want to connect, maybe become volunteers, or they actually need the help, it's certifiedlisteners.org is the website. Anything else you want to share about your organization that those, you know, listening today should know about? I mean,
Greg wants to add something. All I'm going to say, and I know maybe he has a couple of things, is that we're going to start university clubs. So if anybody out there is in a university that wants to start a Certified Listeners University Club, we're more than happy to help there. And there are many other things, good things that are happening with Certified Listeners in the future. So I'll turn it over to Greg.
I'm not sure. Well, I tend to dream big and act practical. So to me, there's no limit, but things need to be done well. So I think, yeah, if people want to reach out, if they have ideas, and again, it doesn't have to be the frontline collar stuff. That's not everybody's cup of tea.
No.
And you can make as significant a contribution not being a listener as you can helping people understand it or do education or promotions. So if it's something that speaks to you and you want to have a conversation with us, we would love to hear from you.
yeah, excellent. And also, can people donate if you want to donate to the organization?
We have a donation page in our website, so they can go to certifiedlisteners.org/donate, and there is a donation box there. So that will be fantastic if they can help us out. And yeah, it's right on the website, you know, yes, certifiedlisteners.org/donate, and that's where you're going to find a donation button there.
Excellent work. Keep it up. I love the goals of university clubs. Students really struggle with keeping up with others, and they don't want to disappoint their parents. And you know, maybe they go to, you know, I had a lawyer friend of mine who studied law, and he got out and he said, "I hate this," and he totally changed gears, you know, and a totally different career. So, and that's so important, just to be heard and have the courage to make that change. Again, Greg and Alejandro, thank you so much. Keep up the great work. And for those listening today, thank you for listening and following us. 26 Minutes With, and the Deeper Dive Show is a podcast about inspiration and leadership, and it's so important right now in this day and age, and it honors those who are leading, making an impact, creating positive change on the planet and locally. It's been a joy having both of you as a guest. And next week, we will feature a young man based in Cambodia, believe it or not, originally from Europe, Andra Nemchik, talking about his quest to make other people happy. So it's going to be an interesting chat that we have with Andra next week. Be sure to share, comment, like down below. We have all our links. And in the meantime, have a good week, everybody.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. What a joy.